And so we need the veterans to speak out. We need them to be the voices in their community.
Hi, everyone. This is Angie Wong. I'm an ambassador for Veterans for America First. I'm so excited to be speaking with Dick Heller and Debbie Dooley today. We have some exciting new developments coming out of the Supreme Court yesterday, so we've got a lot to talk about. But first, I want to give a big thank you to all the veterans listening, and as well as all the members of Veterans for America First. We're having a great year, and we hope to bring that home to the midterm elections as well as to 24. But first, Debbie's has a nice intro to introduce our guest today. Debbie?
Hey, this is Debbie Dooley, and we are honored to have Dick Heller on the phone, interviewing him on this call. And he's always been a hero of mine because he is behind the 2008 decision that was DC versus Heller that, just said, hey, there is a right to bear arms. There was a Supreme Court decision that was released yesterday. It was New York State Rifle and Pistol Association that furthers the 2008 Heller decision. And I wanted to read you his press release that he sent out. About that decision, the Heller Foundation announces its praise for the latest Supreme Court decision on firearms freedom in America. With the political volatility created by defunding the police, allowing citizens to run revolving door rampaging in big cities, mass shootings, it's putting an unbelievable amount of people at risk when leftists and anarchists are burning down cities, and with homicide rates escalating, this important decision is very timely. These horrific events themselves should certainly be the only probable cause reason truly needed for law-abiding citizens to exercise their natural right to self-preservation and now self-defense outside their home or domicile without political hurdles is very clear for all to see and recognize. The New York State Rifle and Pistol Association decision furthers that 2008 magnificent Judge Anton Scalia gun decisions, individual right to possess and carry weapons in case of confrontation. Unlike the two-step process required in the Heller and McDonald decisions, with just a single step, this important decision applies to all states because it was initiated as a state-level Second Amendment case. This is a great step forward for law and order and a bad day for those who would destroy our culture of freedom, orderliness, and safety. Without a state to whimsically define a special need for anyone's self-defense, this is a great day for all law-abiding citizens. Mr. Heller, would you like to add anything else to this and talk a little bit about why this decision was necessary and how the state of New York, their attack on the Second Amendment with their law that this ruling addressed?
And that's a real simple answer. When more guns, less crime. Less guns, more criminals are armed and attack law-abiding, hardworking citizens. And women are especially vulnerable. I mean, most guys just don't realize the trauma that women go through every day just walking down the streets. And at my old grandpa age, women kind of tell me about it. Yeah, I was walking home from work the other day and, and they tell their stories and they say, good God, when I was 30, I didn't know all this. Women were just prey, Hey, chick, let's go out for a beer. and you know the drill.
Absolutely. Women, should be the primary drivers of Second Amendment rights because we're the most vulnerable.
Absolutely.
You go out and you go outside, women, predators, these folks that are predators and criminals will pick on women because they find that we're vulnerable. And I just cannot see why any woman would support gun control. And this is a big ruling that's just like with the 2008 Heller decision, DC versus Heller. This is going to dramatically increase Second Amendment rights. Unfortunately, last night we had some Republicans that actually voted for the Red Flag Confiscation Act. They call it the Gun Safety Act. We had 15 Republicans that actually voted for that. And that includes the leader, Mitch McConnell. And I mean, the red flag law, it's not a gun safety law, it's a gun confiscation act. And that's going to impact women the most because of the fact it would allow, it would require anybody under the age of 21, you have to go through expanded background checks, mental health and all that. Well, there's a lot of folks still, even today, they get married right out of high school. They marry the high school sweethearts, they get married. And some of those women have been in domestic violence situations, and this is going to negatively impact them because it expands, when it comes to domestic violence, it expands, this law that passed expands, who guns can be confiscated from. So, I would like your thoughts on the 15 turncoat Republicans that voted in favor of this.
Well, my opinion is that their hometowns will take care of that issue. We really can't do much to address it. My point is that gun control is basically war on women. It should even be called misogyny. If you have an 18-year-old wife that can't buy a firearm, that lives in the not best neighborhood when you're just starting out in life, in the lower rungs of the economic ladder, we're working with Gun Owners of America. We're basically no compromise. Now, you don't want certainly mental cases carrying guns, but every state has something called the Baker Act. Almost every state, if not every state. And Baker Act was first implemented in Florida that said, that it established state procedures and due process that if someone was a true danger to the society, they could actually commit them to a hospital. And under those conditions, they could certainly be disarmed. But the red flag law, that's not what it is. It's another layer on top of the onion that is not needed because states already have these Baker laws.
And I totally agree. And the thing that's concerning to me is a lot of these women that are in these domestic violence situations, a lot of them are under mental care, mental health care because of the trauma and being in this situation. And let's be honest, there are some women, when you're going through a divorce, I mean, it's very few, but there are some women that make false charges against their husbands of domestic abuse, and it's never been proven or anything like that. Well, their husbands could have their guns confiscated if they're innocent. These gun control laws and these red flag laws negatively impact women the most. And I'm appalled when I see, and even in this gun confiscation red flag law that passed, we had a lot of women that were senators that actually voted for this. You had Murkowski, Ernst, Collins voted for it, Capito voted for it. So that is just, I just can't believe why a woman would deny herself and vote for anything that denies her Second Amendment rights for self-defense. It's just appalling that they do that. And I do think that a lot of these senators will face the wrath of their constituents in their state over this. And I'm appalled. I'm appalled at these mass shootings. But if you have someone that goes out deliberately drunk, drives drunk, gets in an auto accident and kills a family or kills somebody, you don't, but the media and the left, they don't go out and blame the car and say, oh, let's ban this or let's ban alcohol to prevent drinking. They blame the individual that was driving, that violated the law, that's responsible. Contrast that with mass shootings, automatically it's the guns to blame. And that's ridiculous.
Sure. I have a new phrase I'm trying to promote. It's like you don't confiscate the car or blame the car, you blame the hands on the steering wheel. Well,
Right.
You don't blame the gun. You don't blame the gun. I think you should blame the trigger finger. And then that means you're blaming the owner of the trigger finger, not gun violence, it's trigger finger violence.
And I agree. I mean, we've had material that, you know, even the bombing with, I think it was Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma bombing of the courthouse.
Timothy McVeigh, sure. Yeah.
He used fertilizer. Did they start blaming the fertilizer? No, they blamed Timothy McVeigh. He is the evil person that created the bomb. People that do mass shootings are evil, so they should be blamed, not the weapon that's used. And the hypocrisy, you know, is ridiculous when it comes to that.
Well, that's who the Democrats and the socialists and the comrades are. What does Chris Plant say all the time? He says, if they have any standards at all, it's a double standard.
Oh, I love that. And that is absolutely correct. We have freedoms. I just got word that the Supreme Court just struck down Roe v. Wade. Oh man, now's the time when everybody needs their weapons and guns because the left is going to go berserk over this. The problem, I mean, the problem is just ridiculous that they do this. The knee-jerk reaction that they have, oh, it's the guns to blame. It's not the person with the gun to blame. And that's, you know, that double standard is appalling. So definitely everyone better be fully armed now with the Roe v. Wade decision that Supreme Court just made.
Well, Debbie,
Sure.
can I jump in here? I have a quick question about that, actually, because, you know, every state has slightly different self-defense laws. So even if you have a concealed carry or just a permit, it doesn't mean that you can necessarily use it. And I think that's where there's going to be multiple interpretations of what this law is, even though as a layman, I read it and I think this is an absolute. There is no misinterpretation of what the justices have said. But I do want to ask you, sir, whether or not, how do you feel this new law will manifest as it enters the cities?
Is this Angie?
Like New York City. This is Angie, yes.
Yeah,
This
just
is
call
Angie
me
speaking.
Dude. Sir or some grandpa
Okay.
somewhere. My name's Dude.
Oh, you want me to call you Dude? I'm happy to do that. Thank
Super.
you so much, Dude.
Super.
So I was this morning in preparation of this call. I spoke with my friends at NYPD, and I spoke with friends in New York to see what the vibe was on the ground there. And amongst my friends in NYPD, they basically said everyone's split on this. Cops are split on this decision. Half feel that there's going to be a lot more crime prevention, not knowing whether or not the person, that if there was a two-party exchange or multi-party exchange, not knowing if any of the parties is carrying. So a lot of them feel as though that would be a crime prevention, whereas the other half, cops, kind of feel, well, no, well, honestly, I'll quote verbatim. They feel the other half might be too retarded to know how to handle a gun and hurt a lot of people. My question to you is, how do you see this new law manifesting as it enters cities such as New York City, mainly because as soon as the Supreme Court passed this decision yesterday, immediately you had New York's governor come out asking for a special session with the two houses. You had the NYPD commissioner saying, hey, you still can't carry a gun. You still need to go through us and all these other provisions. And now this morning, very early, you have the city council calling for a special session to find ways to essentially create roadblocks for carrying in New York. So what do you say to all that? And we did expect some of this response, but what do you think will happen?
Just like that magnificent Justice Antonin Scalia of 2008, that's the way I refer to it. The city, apparently, they had some of the most expensive and finest Second Amendment lawyers on their side in America when they lost. So apparently what they had devised was fallback position, because as soon as we went outside the court and talked to the banks of microphones, you know, a great day for America, and honest citizens will live, breathe easier and a safer life now. The mayor, Fenty, got up on his soapbox and said, sort of whiny, "You have your guns." Think of Cool Hand Luke and the warden. You have your guns, but we have gun control. And
That's right.
And sort of like the blood drained down on my face, and I said, "Oh man, what just happened?" There's something going. There's an undertow here. So what they immediately did is within 48 hours, they came out with a list of 16 restrictions, and within inside of 48 days, Heller 2 and Heller 3 challenged those 16 restrictions, and we won 8 of them. And then Sandy Hook happened, which everybody went to sleep with pain and tears in their eyes, and we basically missed that window of response opportunity for an appeal, which was like probably 60 days. So expect, especially New York City, and the other 6 states will just pattern themselves after that. Expect them to put up every single hurdle they can find that ever existed in the other 49 states, and that's what we're up against. It'll take some more. It'll take some more court action.
Okay, so expect more court actions.
Hey, this
There'll
is
be
Debbie.
10 to a dozen hurdles. All kinds of registration, all kinds of limitations on type of guns. They'll throw in caliber, magazine size, how much you can carry on your body on the street, of how much ammo you can carry on your person on the street. You name it, it'll be in it.
Well, today they're discussing, one of the mechanisms would be to discuss gun-free zones. Now, I don't know the jurisdictions, the various jurisdictions within New York State well enough to say, but that they're talking about expanding the gun-free zone. And would you happen to know more about that?
Oh, yeah, it'll go from 1st Street to 100th Street, and 1st Avenue to 20th Avenue, and from streets A to Z. That's a gun-free zone. I mean, in D.C., they made it so exclusive where you could carry. You couldn't carry within 1,000 feet of a library, school, or a bar. And if you drove through town, you'd earn the privilege of going to jail according to D.C. laws. There was no place you could get from point A to point B without breaking the law.
Well, so I'm just wondering. I'm a New Yorker, and I am a concealed carry. I have a concealed carry license. But up until now, I've been it's been impossible to carry in New York. But I'm thinking about coming in and driving into the city later and seeing whether or not anything could be done. There is a very small window. We are encouraging women, especially women, to apply for their licenses now before all the hurdles are put up. My last question to you quickly is, this Second Amendment will become a midterm and presidential election issue. how do you feel now? I mean, are we confident that the Second Amendment is permanently written in ink and that it shouldn't be an issue, or do you think politicians will try to use this in any way to drum up voters and voters turnout? What do you think this will kind of turn into come November?
Well, if you're a no compromise person like Gun Owners of America, you have a real struggle there because you don't want the bad guys carrying guns. So the real right to carry is constitutional. If you want a gun, you purchase a firearm or some sort of defensive weapon. But what happens is, if you have a criminal record, you should automatically be disqualified. And it's the criminals with records that are carrying. And the problem is the socialists and the comrades, when they send them to jail, they send them through the revolving door and they go out and they keep shooting. There needs to be a superior law that says if you commit a crime armed, use it or not, if you're armed and it's even brandished, you have 5 to 10 years added on to whatever sentence you're going to get, no revolving door. I'll give you an example, a real simple example. We had some expensive dog kidnappers in D.C. just about a month or 6 weeks ago. They found, when they tracked them down, they found that they were criminals already. They added to it with kidnapping, armed kidnapping of dogs, jump out. They were like a jump out squad on the street with their cars, take the dog and drive off. When they found their nest, they found drugs, ammo, underage kids. There must have been a dozen laws broken. And when they were arrested, the attorney general here, the district attorney, turned them back out on the street after armed robbery. And then when something happens, they want to take my gun. They won't even take the criminals' guns. What is wrong with this picture? There's what needs to be addressed come November. And by the way, there are a whole lot of Democrats that are gun owners. It's going to be an interesting struggle.
Hey, this is Debbie Dooley. I just had a couple of quick questions. This ruling does open up the door to a lot of litigation that we see, especially with these states taking advantage of the law that's about to pass with the red flag laws. I know you have a foundation and you accept donations. Are you planning on maybe looking to challenge some of the provisions of the law that that's about to pass that the Republicans voted for last night?
Well, what's interesting is if they apply to D.C., it costs us in the neighborhood of $100,000 just to present a challenge and lose. Of course, if we lose under 1983 provisions, we get reimbursed our legal expenses. The foundation doesn't make a profit or anything. It's just flat expenses. So it is expensive, number one. Number two, if it applies here and we win, then it's very easy for that to be incorporated in all the other states because we're basically one step away. The Supreme Court watches what goes on here very carefully, of course, but that's not the legal reason. Our appellate court here is called the district court, and it addresses federal issues. So if this is is signed and becomes a federal law, then we can address it here. The results will certainly be effective.
And can you give your website so people will can find out more about you and your great work that you're doing, and in case someone would like to give money to help these efforts to advance the Second Amendment?
Oh, certainly. It's just go to HELLERGUNCASE.org. HELLERGUNCASE.org. It's so easy to remember. And it pops you up at Heller Foundation, but HELLERGUNCASE.org. I love it.
And I have my last question is, Are there any books? There are a lot. If you're ever in a situation when you're defending yourself, especially a woman, you know, self-defense, if we're called on to defend ourselves and we have to shoot someone that is trying to harm us, are there any books that that you recommend for folks to read about what to do in situations like that?
Boy, I'll tell you, that's a very good question. And here's the challenge. It used to be if 5 conditions existed, you were able to use deadly force. And the conditions were if the person, the bad guy, the threat was within harm's distance of you, like 6 feet if he's brandishing a knife, or maybe, half a block away if you see a gun threat, and you were in fear, and he had the means, and he had issued a threat. Life was pretty simple. There were 4 issues to address, and you could defend yourself. Now, there are 5 different issues. I call them weasel words that you have to address, and each of those weasel words has 3 to 5 sub-weasel words to it, and it's called the standards of proof. And for instance, one of them is just absolutely disgusting. You have the castle doctrine and the right to stand your ground, but one of the weasel words is exiting capability. Could a reasonable person have exited the situation to preclude the use of deadly force using your weapon?
Wow.
Well, that's really murky ground there. Maybe I twisted my ankle, or maybe I was on crutches, or maybe I was an athlete. Who gets to decide if you had a reasonable possibility of running away or falling off the curb or tripping over something in an exit, and instead of standing your ground, which you might choose to do?
And that's very informative, because that's something we have to be aware of with that. And the law applies in different states, but you have George Soros backed district attorneys that even though you're a red state, the county that you may have, you may need to, that requires lethal force. I mean, they could have one of these George Soros district attorneys that's going to try to put you in jail.
Let me read the 5 weasel words for you. Okay, first is innocence. Okay, how innocent are you? Did you start the fight? Did you escalate it in some fashion? How did it wrap up? The second one is imminence. Were you actually totally in danger if other people are looking at your situation? 3 is proportionality. If he had a knife at your throat and you pulled out your gun, golly, is that proportional? A jury gets to decide that.
Wow.
Could you have used non-deadly force? Did you take a karate class and you forgot how to do it? Number 4, avoidance. Would reasonable people think on the jury that you had the duty to retreat? Okay, and element number 5, reasonableness. Presumptions of reasonableness. Who gets to decide that? The jury now. So things have really weaseled into a new world, and that has to be addressed.
That's something that's good, because
Terrifying.
It is. And you do give classes. You do. To me, every woman, should take a class that teaches them, if you have to, this is what you do in situations where you're required to use deadly force, and understand that, there are a lot of classes like this across the United States. Are there any that you put on or you recommend for women to take?
Well, because of the special situation, and when I got married about 20 years ago at age 65, that's when I suddenly realized that I had a responsibility, and I recognized the vulnerableness of women. And so I am a NRA certified firearms instructor, and my course is called Women's Self-Defense with Firearms. And what I do is I cover these legal issues, but to learn to shoot the gun, you can't spend 2 hours on law, right? So what happens is when I prepare them at the range, even in the second session, we use moving targets as a practice so that they are prepared for my concealed carry instructor, George Lyon, who happens to also be one of my attorneys and the winning attorney in the Heller 4 case, prepare them for his class. And as an attorney, he gives a DC certified concealed carry class that entails about 5 or 6 hours of discussion of the law, so that everyone, no one can say, I didn't know, but you'll be prepared to know what you have to do to defend yourself in court. And then he goes to the range and he gives a course, basically is about half as good as my, probably as good as my police course, except it's all done at short range, maybe 10 yards or less. Instead of my course, we have to do a lot of work at 25 yards, way down the end of the range. So that's my avocation now, and it's such a passion for me that I don't charge anything for it. Up to now, I've even been paying for the answer. Probably needs to change.
Wow, I want to take that course.
Yeah, so did that answer your question?
It did. I mean, this has been very informative because, because women are some of the ones that are the most victims of violent crime because we're a target. They criminals, and they think we're weak, and we have to be proactive. And I've actually taken a couple of courses like that because you don't want to wait. Thank God I've never had to use lethal force. But if I ever need to, these courses will come in handy because, the last thing you want to do is when you've had to use lethal force and, and you're questioned by police, you don't want to have to worry, am I now going to be a target for prosecution? So these courses help, or help women become proactive, and they know what to do. And that's why I think they're vitally important.
Certainly. And the one thing that if you live in a socialist environment, you might have been dead right, but they'll make sure that you're economically dead destroyed.
That's right. That's right.
It can cost $100,000 to defend yourself. The book that George Lyon gives with his course is called The Law of Self-Defense Principles by attorney Andrew Branca, B-R-A-N-C-A, Andrew Branca. And interestingly, if anyone knows the name, the trainer of superlative par excellence firearms trainer in America is a fellow by the name of Massad Ayoob, A-Y-O-O-B, Massad Ayoob. He does the foreword. He thinks so highly of this book. And as a cop myself, I still, born in 1941, but I'm still carry a gun, a badge, and a power of arrest. I'm impressed by this book. It kind of scares me. Except I'm wearing a badge that probably makes it a little bit easier for me.
Well, I want to thank you for taking our call today and also for giving us such great insight, especially since this is such the hot topic of the moment. And, we certainly want to understand a lot more as this law evolves. And certainly there's going to be plenty of lawfare coming from the other side to come. So we'd love to have this chat again with you, when things manifest. And, and I thank you for hosting all your events and for giving free defense courses. I mean, you're doing so much. And I wanted to just kind of ask you one last question before we go, which is, would it be better to carry or not carry at this point? I mean, I for myself, I think about that. I have a concealed carry license. I've gone through the courses and the background checks, but I still don't know if I should carry. Now, I know that's an individual, it's a very personal question, but in this day and age, we're allowed to. Would you suggest carrying or not?
The only thing I can do is speak for myself, and when my wife's CC comes through, then I'll understand a little bit more how to answer that question. But myself, I go to, I have a PO box. I live right on Capitol Hill. During the HELLER 1 case, I lived like 1 block from the Supreme Court. It was very convenient. Now I live about a dozen blocks away. So I go up on the hill to get my mail because people steal the mail off your porch and your packages. So I hop on my bike, and the only time I really carry is basically when the sun goes down. That's when evil comes out. Evil comes out when the sun goes down. So that's about the only time I carry, because criminals have a way they operate. They see a female walking down the street with a purse and dressed like a fancy dress like an attorney, and they'll have a modus operandi. They don't look for bicycles coming down the street with some dude looking like a bum wearing shorts. They know he's not going to be wearing it, or they watch to steal. So that's my personal situation. I rarely carry. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is I avoid places. In D.C., it's becoming like San Francisco, what used to be nice streets to restaurant streets to eat on.
Check out this house I found.
Getting outbid.
Orchard is different.
I don't go there anymore. I go to a fancier restaurant a couple of blocks away where the bums aren't laying on the sidewalk and panhandling and doping up.
Yeah, that's a much more pandemic issue happening amongst all our cities. But I want to thank you again, dude, and thank you, Debbie, for all this, and thank you, Veterans for America First, for giving us the space and platform to talk about big issues like this. I wish everyone a great weekend and a safe weekend, and certainly be safe out there now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned by the Supreme Court. Great news for many conservatives. So thank you again.
I'm headed down on my bicycle to see what's going on at the Supreme Court right now.
Oh, do report.
Be safe.
Please
be safe.
And have a great event this weekend, Dick. Thank you so much.
Be safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye now.